goes a new segment, and let's start basically. Let me make this window a little bigger. I think this will be better. And so, of course, I will start with, as always, I will start with a report about work of Russian air defense systems past night. Defense Ministry reported that air defense intercepted 32 drones that was launched by Kyiv regime to strike deep into Russian territory. 11 drones were intercepted over the Belgorod and Voronezh regions, each 5 drones over the Nizhny Novgorod region, 1 each over the Bryansk, Kursk, Tula, and Tambov regions, as well as over Mordovia region. And this is nighttime attempts of Kyiv regime and NATO to strike deep into Russian territory. But this morning, basically from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., Russian air defense systems intercepted another 30 drones that was launched by Kyiv regime and NATO to strike deep into Russia. So on October 5th, from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. Moscow time, air defense systems destroyed 30 Ukrainian fixed-wing unmanned aerial vehicles, 29 over the Belgorod region, and 1 drone was shot down over the territory of Republic of Crimea. Statement from Russian Defense Ministry said, and I guess right now, as I'm online, Russian air defense systems are intercepting potentially some more drones that was launched by Kyiv regime with the assistance of their Western backers. Same time, last night, Russian armed forces conducted quite a large-scale drone and missile strikes on military and logistical infrastructure of the Kyiv regime, including energy infrastructure. And according to reports from several sources, explosions were heard in Kharkov region, Sumy, Chernigov regions, Dnipropetrovsk region, Zaporizhzhia, Nikolaev, Odessa, Cherkasy, Lvov, Lutsk, Ivano-Frankovsk, a number of other directions. It was a quite a large-scale Russian drone and missile strikes, and focus this time was on Western Ukraine. Some might argue most of the drones and missiles flew towards Western Ukraine, and some military experts are even suggesting that potentially last night's strike was a bigger strike on the Lvov direction, for example. And when it comes to Lvov, we have this report, for example, that as a result of last night's strikes on enemy military infrastructure, Sparrow Park complex was destroyed in Lvov city, which is Western Ukraine, one of the largest transportational hubs in Western Ukraine. According to media reports, the industrial park was used as a logistics center for a strong and for storing and shipping different type of cargo, military cargo included. Social media footage shows direct heat that caused a massive fire throughout the entire perimeter of the warehouse. The facility is located near the Lvov International Airport, approximately 170 kilometers from Rzeszów, Poland, a key distribution point of Western military aid to terrorist regime in Kiev. And I can show you some videos, dear friends, of these strikes. Entire warehouse actually was caught on fire. So the video, and as you can see, this massive complex was basically completely destroyed, and hopefully a lot of Western military equipment and munition was destroyed too as a result of these strikes. Of course, details, nuances are not yet known, but strike was definitely successful and quite a large scale. Also, dear friends, as I said, Russian armed forces were conducting strikes on different directions. And for example, all morning, videos are circulating on internet from Chernigov, where something is also burning. There is a massive fire. I can show you some videos of that. So this is from Chernigov region, dear friends. It's based on this thick, dark smoke. One might argue that energy facility was probably hit, or maybe fuel is burning or something like that. Yet again, details are not yet known about effectiveness of these strikes, but some military experts are going as far as to claim that as a result of Russian retaliatory strikes on military and logistical infrastructure, on energy infrastructure, Kyiv regime and is quite close basically to a serious level of blackouts all over the Kyiv-controlled territory, which could be true, of course. But to continue, dear friends, we have a statement of Russian Defense Ministry about last night's strikes. Let me give you some details on that. So Russian military forces launched a massive strike on Ukrainian defense industry facilities and the gas and energy infrastructure, the Ministry of Defense reported. And we have a quote from the statement of Defense Ministry. Tonight, a massive strike was launched using long-range land, sea, and air-based precision weapons, including Kinzhal hypersonic air launch missiles, as well as the strike drones against Ukrainian military-industrial complex enterprises and the gas and energy infrastructure facilities that supported their operations. Reports said the attacks' objectives were achieved and all designated enemy targets were destroyed. Defense Ministry is stating, and well, yet again, not much nuances even in Defense Ministry's report, but based on all sorts of footage on internet, we can have an informed guess that strike was quite powerful and quite effective. Although Kiev regime, by the way, as always, did claim that the Kiev regime's air defense systems managed to intercept almost 100% of aerial targets, which is hardly believable, even by extreme Russophobes and extreme supporters of this terrorist regime in Kiev. Because if they are intercepting everything, then how come that military-industrial complex of Kiev regime is almost non-existent no more, and the energy infrastructure is destroyed, and logistical infrastructure is getting smashed? So how come? And also to add salt on the wound, by the way, when it comes to losses on the part of Russian enemies, well, TASS news agency here and a number of other media outlets are reporting that Zelensky basically is asking for an air ceasefire following the explosions in Ukraine. So following numerous explosions in Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky abruptly changed his position and asked for a ceasefire in the strikes. Unilateral ceasefire in the skies is possible, he wrote on his Telegram channels. Zelensky did not clarify what he meant by unilateral ceasefire in the skies. However, the publication Strana, Kiev regime's propaganda outlet, notes that his very announcement of an air truce represents a radical shift in position. The publication suggests that Zelensky's abrupt change in the position may be related to Ukraine's significant problems with air defense. Politicians, experts, and journalists have recently been actively discussing the hole in Ukraine's air defense systems. Ukrainian armed forces are experiencing a shortage of missiles for Western air defense systems, as Strana notes. This could have serious negative consequences for Ukraine ahead of the onset of a cold weather. And, well, one might understand why Zelensky is asking for, indirectly, we can say, but still asking kind of for air ceasefire or ceasefire on long-range strikes. But I don't think Moscow will agree on that. After all the damage that Russian energy infrastructure suffered from long-range strikes by NATO and NATO proxy regime, I don't think Moscow will give any break now to our enemies, and Russian long-range strikes will only increase in scale and number. This is my guess, dear friends, but I think I'm on, I think that's exactly how it's gonna be. We will find out probably, if not today, tomorrow. At least Peskov, press spokesman of the Russian president, will be asked about this initiative of Zelensky on this long-range strike truce, and we will find out where Moscow's position is. In addition, dear friends, I can show you a video of yet another Russian long-range strike, this time with the Iskander M missile system. And according to reports, US-made HIMARS MLRS launch site was destroyed together with the weapon systems there, which is also, I will say, good news, good success, because unfortunately, HIMARS MLRS is a long-range weapon system. HIMARS missiles can strike up to 100 kilometers away, and also HIMARS launchers are used to for ATACMS missiles too that have range of about 300 kilometers. So destruction of each HIMARS system is definitely good news. And this is the video itself, dear friends. Russian militaries were tracking the area of movement of HIMARS complexes, and there is a Iskander explosion, Iskander strike, and that's it. All the equipment destroyed. So minus at least one HIMARS multi-launch rocket system, which is definitely a success story. And well, let's continue with some other news now, dear friends. And next is a report from TASS news agency that Russian armed forces liberated Kuzminovka settlement in DPR. Information is confirmed by Russian Defense Ministry, and let me show you on the map, dear friends, where this settlement is located. So it's Seversk direction, I believe, southern flank of Seversk, and it is the case for sure. So this is Kuzminovka area. Russian troops already are conducting operations inside Zvanovka settlement, and I guess it's only a matter of a week or two, and the Zvanovka and Sviato-Pokrovsk settlements will be under Russian control. And at that point, excuse me, hardly anyone can argue that Seversk itself, that you see right now on your screen, will be in not just operational encirclement, but one might argue in complete encirclement, because Russian armed forces already conducted quite successful offensive operations on the northern flank of Seversk, and Russian troops are conducting operations now in the Dronovka area. Some reports suggesting that Dronovka is already under Russian control. Russian troops also conducting operations in Yampol settlement. And if you take a look at the map, dear friends, these two settlements have strategical positioning right now in the zone of special military operation, because both villages are located in between Seversk and Liman, two big strongholds of the Kiev regime. And I guess at this point, hardly anyone has doubts that Seversk, it is quite likely that Seversk will be liberated before end of this autumn, and potentially Liman also, and all the surrounding small villages and towns. That's been said, dear friends. We also have report that Russian armed forces have practically driven the Ukrainian forces out of Chunishin settlement in Krasnoarmeysk direction. Krasnoarmeysk is a Russian name for Pokrovsk, dear friends. Russian troops, of course, are continuing offensive operations in Pokrovsk, Mirnograd direction too. And let me show you this settlement of Chunishino, which is here, by the way. This relatively small village with there maybe a dozen of buildings there, 2 dozen, okay, and it's a southeastern flank of Pokrovsk city. And already, dear friends, a number of military channels are reporting that Russian troops, regular troops, are basically conducting operations inside Pokrovsk in the central and western parts of the city. A number of blocks in Pokrovsk itself already are under Russian control. So if previously there was reports about significant activity of Russian DRGs, including in the central parts of the city, now it's Russian regular troops that are operating in the town. And let's continue with some other news. Of course, many of you are paying attention to developments in Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant nowadays, especially after outside power lines were cut, and cooling and all the other important systems in Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant completely rely on diesel generators. And IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi called their 10-day external power outage at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant serious situation for nuclear safety, which is basically, I mean, true. We don't have to be like nuclear scientists to understand that you're not going to mess around cooling system around nuclear power plant in general, Zaporizhzhia or any other. And then you definitely don't want to see a situation when outside power source is cut and cooling systems and all the other crucial, vital elements of the power plant are relying solely on diesel generators. So it is a serious situation for sure. Russian president, by the way, during the recent speech of his and Q&A on Valdai Discussion Club, was asked about Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. He said the situation is serious, but in full control. But nevertheless, this situation, when nuclear power plant is shelled on regular basis by enemy, by NATO basically, and NATO proxy regime, is definitely not normal. And the Russian president, dear friends, on that Valdai Discussion Club stated that if this continues, if attacks on Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant continues, then Moscow might mirror basically actions of the enemies. And he reminded everybody, that is Russian president, that there are a number of nuclear power plants on Kiev-controlled territory too. So this was the first time when Russian president or any high-ranking Russian official hinted on a possibility of retaliation for attacks on Zaporizhzhia or any other Russian nuclear power plant in kind, right? So London, globalists and globalist-controlled regimes all over the West, including in UK, should be more careful what they are ordering their proxies in Kiev, because only so many warnings Moscow might issue. At some point, warnings will be changed by actual steps, actual retaliatory strikes, and it's not going to be pretty, for sure. It's not going to be pretty, man. And globalists definitely are not ready for what is coming. So better they de-escalate. Anyways, at this point, dear friends, situation on the power plant, as I said, is under full control. But I have not seen yet reports that outside supply lines were restored. And head of IAEA, as you can imagine, did not stated which side was to be blamed for this emergency situation on the power plant. He never ever, even though IAEA experts are on the territory of Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and they see themselves, right, that shells and all these weapons are flying from Kiev-controlled territory towards the NPP, they never ever demanded from Kiev regime to stop shelling the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, which is a shame for sure. And that's why me personally are extremely critical about IAEA. And I think if this organization cannot be reformed, if Western secret services have that strong grip on this organization and all the others that formally are bodies of UN bodies, then maybe Russia should leave this organization completely, and many other countries will follow for sure. And let them US elites and Israeli elites and British elites play around IAEA as long as they like, when the rest of the world would not pay no more attention to this, right? Maybe that's exactly the direction that the world gonna go. Also, dear friends, today Russian media outlets reported a snippet of interview of Pavel Zarubin, Russian journalist, with President Putin straight after his speech on Valdai Discussion Club. And in this snippet, Russian president was once again talking about risk of transfer of US-made Tomahawk long-range cruise missiles into Kiev-controlled territory. Let me give you some details what Russian president said. So a possible US decision to supply Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine would undermine the positive trends in relations, Russian President Vladimir Putin stated in a comment to Vegetar journalist Pavel Zarubin. And we have quote here: a possible decision to supply Tomahawk to Kiev will lead to destruction of our Russian and US relations, or at least the emerging positive trends in these relations. So I am saying what I think, and how things will turn out depends not only on us. Russian president highlighted there. And yet again, unfortunately, we are now at a point in this proxy war that West is waging against Russia, and in this confrontation, West versus Russia, when I'm afraid literally nobody among Western elites are listening what either Russian president have to say or any other Russian high-ranking officials. And I'm afraid the reason for that is that until now, at least, despite some strong statements about possible retaliation, Moscow did not retaliate on military assets of NATO member states that are directly engaged in this war against Russia. Russia did not retaliate even when UK and US orchestrated strikes on Russian nuclear triads. So therefore, I mean, and what can be bigger than that, by the way, when your nuclear triad is attacked, right? And so therefore, I think globalists and neocons and their allies, regimes all over the West that they control, are probably absolutely sure that Russia is bluffing, Russian leadership is bluffing, and they will do nothing, no matter how far Western elites will go in this escalation. And this situation is tremendously dangerous. Probably vast majority of our community will agree with me, because if Western elites truly think, and they do, I believe, that they can act against Russia with impunity and escalate any way they want, then, well, this is very dangerous. This is very dangerous because they will come up with a scale of escalation that will leave no space for Moscow to further exercise restraint. Moscow will have to retaliate. And of course, I'm talking about next phase of escalation that seems absolutely inevitable, personally, to me, in my reading of the big picture. And when West will launch this next phase of escalation, and they are sort of ready to launch it at any time, I think Moscow will retaliate, and will retaliate with force and the scale that will be absolutely shocking for Western world. It's truly going to be shock and awe. And after that, even if some tit for tat exchange will happen of strikes, shortly after, globalists will de-escalate. Globalists will basically be forced to face the reality and acknowledge that they have lost this proxy war, and they will capitulate. That's how this conflict gonna be resolved. Hello everyone, I hope you find informative and useful this short clip from main news update, and if so, please click that like button and leave some commentary just about anything. It might help to deal with the algorithm and reach wider audience. And if you like my work in general and want to support to save this media project, you can assist through several ways. You can donate to this project through PayPal platform or Boosty, also with the crypto currencies, or you can subscribe to my Patreon page and page on Boosty, where I have quite a lot of extra content on regular basis. All the links are on this video in description box and in the pinned comment. And of course, many thanks to everyone who already helped and continues to support. Thank you.